Hello and welcome. For those of you that don't know, I'm Raine with Raine's Realm, and I help people manifest success through spiritual supplies and education. And today we are continuing our Bible study into things that the Bible actually says and some things that have been inferred or implied throughout time. It is not my job to tell anybody what to believe. The point of this is to look at things in an objective light and let you all think for yourselves. I'm not saying that everything in the Bible is wrong, not necessarily saying that anything in the Bible is wrong. I'm saying that I think that people take certain allowances with things, and we should look and see what it actually says. We are looking at some original translations for some of the words and phrases, and we are pulling from other resources as well to help with language support and things like that, and certain concepts that are also described in the Bible. Other than that, we are just going through it word for word. We are still in the canon right now, so we are still in the Bible that most people are familiar with. We're not dealing with any of the texts from the Apocrypha or anything like that. We're just dealing with the canon. Now, in the last video, we talked a little bit about creation, the creation of man, the fact that there's two creation stories for woman. We are going to pick back up there. We are going to talk about the infamous Tree of Knowledge story and go from there. So, we are starting in Genesis 2:21. So, Genesis 2:21, and I am in the King James Version. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. So we're going to look at this. And also, I want to talk about how in the original text, Adam was Adama, Adama. I'm butchering some of these words, and I do apologize for that. But the Hebrew meaning of that word is soil, earth. So, he was taken from, the soil, from clay, things like that. His name literally means soil, earth. If you look in the original text, we get stuck on the rib part. And a lot of people have tried to use that throughout history to say that woman is somehow inferior to man because, she was just taken from a little tiny rib. But if you look at the original text, it does not say rib. It says half, side. So it says, Lord God took half or side of Adam and made woman, which would make more sense down here where Adam says, This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. Because if it had just been a rib, you'd be like, This is bone of my bone. Because where would he get the flesh part from? But in the original text, it's half, side. So, supposedly Adam was split in half. Male half was Adam, and we have the woman half being Eve. So, just to clarify that with what the original meanings were, because it does not say that. So somehow we did end up getting rib, but that's not what it says in the original text. Feel free to go back and fact check any of this, you guys. I will give as many resources as I can for different things, but some of this is literally just me going through and searching what the original text said and getting the Hebrew translation. So a lot of it is just me doing that, which is a pretty simple search, honestly. So we have the side, the flesh my flesh, bone my bone. And then it says, so now we're going to Genesis 2:24. Therefore shall a man leave his mother and father, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Now, it makes a lot more sense for you to be one flesh with somebody that you are half of. Also, again, just further reiterating that this falls completely in line with the original text. So, now, we know that we are now going into Genesis 3. And earlier in Genesis 2, there is, after the creation and everything else, in Genesis 2:16, we have where God commanded man, saying, of every tree of the garden, but not the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So we have that. And in there, it does say that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. So far, right now, we have, if you eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you shall surely die. So, Genesis 3. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. This does go back to the first video I did in the series with the whole ye are gods, but that's where we're not going to get into that today. But just to further show that there's another point in the Bible that says that. So, Genesis 3:6. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. Her husband with her, and he did eat. It doesn't say that she ate the fruit, and then she went and found Adam and gave him some. He was right there with her. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. The original text says something along the lines of girdles, but to cover the torso. So that's the original text for that. But in this one, we have aprons. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden. And the Lord God called unto Adam, and said unto him, Where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, and I hid myself. We're going to touch on this more in just a minute. And he said, Who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? And the man said, The woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did not eat. Already being thrown under the bus. Because he was right there with her. And he never stood up and said, no, we shouldn't eat of it. I can't find that anywhere in the text where Adam said, no, we were told not to eat of this. And it wasn't even we were told. God told Adam. Adam passed the message on, which, it's still a valid message. But then the minute that something goes wrong, she gave it to me. Which is going to tie into this next section really well. But anyway, so And the Lord God said unto the woman, what is it that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. Now, she pointed out that the serpent tricked her, and she still took responsibility. She still said, and I did eat. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above the cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I'll put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow shalt thou bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to be with thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. We're going to talk about this more in just a minute, too. And unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Now, he said, because thou hearken unto the voice of the wife. Eve gets, always thrown under the bus here. But if you really read this, like I just did, basically, Adam, because you listened to somebody else and you didn't think for yourself and do the very thing that I told you, this is your curse. Not because woman destroyed your relationship with me. Okay? So, if you actually just read it. Thorns also and thistles shalt bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken. For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. And Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins and clothe them. It does say coats of skins. It doesn't specifically say like ankle-length dresses or anything like that. It's very generic here. So, we should keep in mind that when God himself made clothes, it was just coats of skin. So it wasn't, anything with multiple layers and stuff like that. So we have that. Now, nowhere, and I've looked for the original words too, and I have not found them. If somebody spots it in this text that we've gotten to so far, please let me know. But nowhere in this text that we have found so far does the word sin come into being. They didn't do what God said, but it was not actually officially called a sin at this point. We're always like, oh, original sin, Eve. It doesn't say that. Now I'm going to finish this last section and we're not going to go into chapter 4. We're just doing this section today. But I'm going to go ahead and finish it up because we just have these 3 last verses, and then we're going to go into a little bit more of this in detail. So, Genesis 3:22. And the Lord God said, behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now lest he put forth his hand, and take also of the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden, till the ground from whence he was taken. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way, to keep the way of the tree of life. Now what I find interesting here is we always say, oh, he put an angel with a flaming sword. But actually, if you just read it, there was a few angels, at least, and the flaming sword seemed to have a mind of its own. So that's just something to keep in mind with that. Now, if you start to really delve into the tree of knowledge of good and evil, it didn't mean just knowing right from wrong. they already would have known that from the fact that God said don't eat of it. And they would have been able to understand that it wasn't right to eat of it because God said don't. They already knew right from wrong to a certain degree. So the tree of knowledge of good and evil is really saying the tree of the knowledge that encompasses everything, from the highest good to the worst evil, encompasses everything. This is like when you say that somebody's been to, like, it's phrases like the four corners of the earth, when somebody may not have literally gone all over the earth, but it's it's a phrase like that. So it's saying that it's literally the knowledge of everything. So it's not like they didn't understand right from wrong before this, or they didn't have a conscience before this and they suddenly got a conscience. No, they suddenly knew everything. Now, some of the theories out there for why they would have even cared that they were naked once they had that knowledge is because it was a disobedient act that then separated them and put them on a completely different plane than they were when they were first created. And so, hypothetically, before that, they could have uh, been clothed in, the Spirit of God, is one theory. And after having been surrounded and encompassed by that brightness of being clothed in the Spirit and having that gone, it would have been a stark reality to realize that there's a big difference in us now. Another theory is that with that knowledge, they knew that certain body parts held more value than others, and they wanted to protect them. Now, that wouldn't really describe the ashamed part. The first theory actually describes it a little bit better, but I'm throwing out some different things that I've read while trying to research this for you guys. So that is some ideas for the why they would have even cared that they were naked after eating the fruit. Now, also, let's go to the curses for Adam and Eve. Now, where it says in Genesis 3:16, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow shalt thou bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Okay, so the word here, it's not. A lot of people are like, oh, it meant that, this is where childbirth became painful. And all of that. Now, it's conception here. Greatly multiply thy sorrow and conception. If you go and you look at the original scripts, the original Hebrew, it's the word is work that is used. Increase your work in your pregnancies is the phrase that's actually used. And the same word work that is used for Eve is also used for Adam when talking about working the ground. So to simplify it, basically God said, now you're going to have a lot of work and a lot of pregnancies. And ain't that the story of a woman's life? So that's what it originally says. Now, there's some argument that the reason why childbirth is so painful now compared to every other living thing that gives birth is because, with the knowledge that we have, and the body has to has to deliver this skull with this big old baby brain in it, that because of the intelligence and the potential for intelligence that we have, that that could have been a natural consequence. But as far as the actual curse goes, it's greatly increase your work and your pregnancies. And that's what the word is isivore. I'm probably butchering it, but it's Izavor. And it's the same word used for Eve that's used for Adam. So the other part of this, with the desire, for your husband, and he'll rule over you. A lot of people have used this to try to say that men are supposed to rule over women. But again, when you go back to the original translations in the scripts and you look at it in the context of just looking at it for what it is and not adding or subtracting from it, it seems like the most realistic explanation for this is that even though women have to endure such a horrible pain in childbirth, they will still desire after their husbands. And their sexual desire for their husbands will still rule over them in that way. It's not, the word rule there is not the authoritarian word rule, although it is a lot of times mistranslated that way because it has AUTH to start it. But that's not what that word means. That word is dealing with, in this instance, especially when you read the text, it's dealing with sexual desire. It's dealing with the fact that, yes, childbirth, the pain is horrific, but I still desire you. And my, decisions on having children is still going to be ruled by my desire for you. Because anybody who's had a child, especially natural childbirth or a birth trauma, I'll put those in there too. Anybody who has multiple children, after that happened with one, you swore probably that you were never having another. You were like, that's it, I'm done. Never going through that pain again. It was horrible. It's horrific. And maybe some of you haven't, but I guarantee there's a lot of women with multiples that after they had the first one, they swore never again. And then they had the second one and they swore never again. And so you can see this playing out in harmony, in the world of humans. Like, you can see this. Anytime that you see men trying to lord over women, there's an imbalance there. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in the harmony with nature. This does. So this makes sense as the translation, as well as that's what the original script says. So, you can take it or leave it, but it's what the original script actually says. So, there's that. The other thing that makes me wonder is when we look at Genesis 3:20, after the curses. And Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. And what makes that seem interesting here is the curse is the first time that we talk about pregnancies. It's the first time that we hear about it. And I know we're in the beginning of the Bible, but it's the first time that we hear about it. So, because I'm looking at all of this other stuff, we see that in back in Genesis 1:28, when God created man and woman, and we've talked about that a little bit in the last video. And bless them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. Now, this is again why I say that I feel like, we're talking about maybe two different people, because there's no name of a woman here. Now, after this talk of childbirth here, which is the first time that we see childbirth actually spoken about, and we don't see that in Genesis 2:24, when We're talking about man and woman being one flesh. We don't hear anything about that there. But then in Genesis 3, we're hearing about childbirth. We're hearing about painful pregnancies. And we're hearing about Adam naming his wife Eve because she's the mother of all living. Now, the Hebrew meaning for Eve is life and living one, which explains why that would be her name. But it's not until after we talk about the pregnancy and childbirth that she gets that name. Were we originally meant to reproduce? Or was it, going to be more creations? I don't know. I mean, probably we were, but it's very interesting the way that the wording is here. So I think that that's of note. So it wasn't until God was like, you're going to have these pregnancies and childbirth, and then Adam was like, oh, so you're going to be the mother of all living things. We'll call you Eve. So that's of note, because it's just an interesting way of wording it. And I don't think that anything in the Bible was really just put in willy-nilly, so to speak. So the things that are in here, they're timed in such a way that they're in their specific way for a specific reason. And sometimes, we focus so much on the one or two main things that we've been told to focus on that we don't really look at the other things that have not been brought to our attention as much. But, like I say, it's not my job to tell you what to think. It's my job to help you think for yourself. So those are some thoughts, for today. Also, the only other thing because this is another big one on the whole woman thing and being treated as inferior and stuff like that, when, we as a society seem to focus on the word helpmeet or helper or things like that when talking about creating Eve. But if you go back again to the original and you look at the Hebrew, the original word, I'm just going to spell it for you guys. It's Ezer space Ke dash Negdo. That's the original word that gets translated into helper or helpmeet or mate, helpmate. But there's always that help word stuck in there. Helper. Women are helpers. But it's not, because that word specifically means equal or like a power partner. So it's equal, the big definition. And the other definition can be something along the lines of a source of power. So not inferior. I'm not saying superior either, but definitely not inferior. Equal. So one was not created better than the other. I mean, honestly, and I could be completely wrong, and that's fine. And look, I do these videos so we can discuss it. I don't do these videos to disrespect anybody's religious beliefs. I don't do these videos to anger people. I don't do these videos to trivialize faith. I do these videos so we can talk about these things and really discuss them and look at them objectively without bringing, emotions of like indignation into it. Just talk about it as logical human beings and see what we think. Because it seems to me that, you had Adam, half of Adam was taken away to become an equal. So I don't know that Adam was really only male in the beginning. And that's not me being disrespectful. You have like some different, people who just have zero tolerance for anything different and would act like it was sacrilegious to ask these questions. But we have to understand that, a lot of different people exist and different types of people. And so I don't know if Adam was only a man when he was created, because half of him was taken away to make Eve. Half, not a rib. Half. So, what would have been the half if he had only been a man? So, recap thoughts for the day. The word sin was actually not in there when we're talking about the tree. Eve, equal, half, actually took responsibility for what she did, didn't try to, only pawn it on others, said what happened, but took responsibility for what she did. The curse is, increasing work and pregnancies, and not meant to be ruled over in an authoritarian way. So we've touched on some other points too, but these are just some food for thought as we go into chapter 4 in the next video. Thank you all so much for watching. Please, please, please comment. I want to hear your thoughts. If you completely disagree with me, say it, but give me reasons why. And let's keep it respectful. I want to have these discussions with you guys. I would love to do some lives as well so we can really discuss this even further. That's something that I'm working towards also. So let me know if that's something you're interested in as well. If this video gave you any insight, you found it interesting, it helped you in any way, please click the thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe. Click the little bell icon so you never miss a video. We're going to be doing the Bible study for a while. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.